They say it, and it's true, that everything is getting faster. You're not getting any younger, and time is the single resource that you can never get back or get any more of. So why walk into your local comic shop blind when you can go in laser focused on the best books on the shelf?
Hi everybody, and welcome to Minute to Skim It. Yeah!
Spend 1 hour with Miss Jen and Bean, and they'll give you rapid-fire reviews of all the new comics hitting stores. Spend less time shopping and more time reading.
This is Provenance of Secrets.
This is The Heathens. I read Wolverine number 17.
Minute to Skim It, every Tuesday at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific, on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. I hope you are doing well. We have got a rather unique show for you today, but originally Paul Story, my co-host for Pop Go the Writers, was going to join us, and he was going to interview me because I have a Kickstarter that is out right now and up and running, and yeah, well, it turns out that about 2 hours ago, Paul's internet went out and there's no ETA on it coming back. So, no Paul today, but producer Kyle is going to step in a little bit, and we'll talk about the Karma Kickstarter, which is going really well. Maybe I can give you guys some background on it, a little bit about my history as a photographer, stuff like that. We'll have to see what Kyle comes up with question-wise. So that'll be in a few minutes. But before we do that, kind of a little bit of a rant to get off my chest here. And it's basically about the utter train wreck that is Warner Brothers and the DCEU. Now, I've been reading the history of Marvel Studios. I'm on the second half of it. It's a 2-book set, so I'm reading the second book. And it is amazing how they do things, how they look for new people to come in, how they find common ground. And they have been doing this successfully now since middle of the 2000s, mid 2000s. They put out their first movie in 2008, and they just work. They've had a few missteps, one or two, miscasts, and then they replace those people. And otherwise, it has gone really well. Now, we can look back at some of the movies and go, well, maybe Avengers Age of Ultron wasn't the best, or maybe Thor the Dark World was a kind of a cluster. But overall, even their bad movies are still somewhat good, and then they find ways to improve them later on. Look how much Thor the Dark World is now important to the MCU after Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. And, they just find ways to fix things, Even the Hulk movie, which people didn't seem to like that much, they've brought Thunderbolt Ross in. They're bringing back the Abomination. I'm still holding out hope that they bring back Samuel Stearns, a.k.a. the Leader. I think he would be a great villain at some point. And it'd be interesting to see if they bring him back into the She-Hulk series, because I think that's a character that would play really well in She-Hulk. So with that as kind of the the top end. And then you look at the Star Wars universe, also Disney, yes, but run by different people. And they've been having their issues. They, Rogue Squadron being postponed and having creative difficulties. Lord and whatever from the Lego movie not doing, being replaced on Solo. They've had their difficulties. But the bottom line is that they still stick with whatever it is they've done. They make it work. And overall, most of the stuff is pretty good. Yeah. I'm not a fan of the Rey, Finn, Poe set of movies. A couple of them were, some of the stuff was okay, but they're not my favorite. I don't like the fact that they felt it necessary to bring back Han and Leia and Luke and take away the happy ending that we got in Return of the Jedi. But I understand that. And they're still telling a cohesive universe story. You go over to Warner Brothers, and it's like they really don't know what they're doing. And maybe it's the turnover, maybe it's the leadership, you've got the CW shows were a hit for a long time. They seem to be in chaos now, and we don't even know if Warner Brothers is going to hang on to the CW or not. It sounds like it's up for sale. You look at all the stuff that Zack Snyder did and built this cohesive universe that, around Aquaman and Batman and stuff. And they walked away from Christian Bale as Batman and the Christopher Nolan Batman series to start fresh, which surprised me because Christopher Nolan was kind of the producer on, was part of Man of Steel, I believe. He's the one that helped pick Zack Snyder. So there seemed like there was a connection. So they could have stuck with Christian Bale if they could have afforded him and talked him into it. But instead they switched to Ben Affleck, who I liked as Batman. And they kind of pushed those successful 3 movies away, which they could have kept, right? Then they do, they bring in Gal Gadot and they bring in Ezra Miller and Jason Momoa and Ray Fisher to create the Justice League. And now it's, we're going to keep Momoa and Gal Gadot, but we're going to get rid of, and we're going to keep Ezra Miller, but we're getting rid of Ray Fisher because of issues when he did fine as Cyborg. We're getting rid of Ben Affleck because he doesn't want to play because, it's something about what happened on Justice League was horrible. Justice League itself went from being one kind of movie to the tragedy in Zack Snyder's life, causing this opening for the studio just to really muddle with it. Bringing in Joss Whedon, who seemed to be just an issue walking. So now they're kind of all over the place. They're like, we're going to bring back Michael Keaton as Batman. Well, why are you getting older and older on Batman? Why do we need that old of a Batman? Are you doing Batman Beyond? Great, then do Batman Beyond. But why are you making Michael Keaton the Batman for the new Batgirl movie? And he's going to have a Robin. And why, Marvel successfully pulled off Spider-Man No Way Home by bringing back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and kind of wrapping up those movies. And then they closed the door to that. It's this one thing. They didn't suddenly make it where there's 3 Spider-Men running around. They didn't undo all this stuff. They said, now Peter Parker doesn't, no one knows that Peter Parker, who he is. Okay, it didn't take away the stuff he did as Spider-Man. People still remember Spider-Man and the things he did. They just don't remember who he is under the mask. These, the reports are that they're going to completely just wipe out Justice League and all this other stuff instead of building on it and fixing it. You have someone like Henry Cavill, who is a great Superman, who wants to continue. If you put him with a director that gets the character. And I don't mean a Bryan Singer. I don't mean a love letter to Richard Donner. Okay? Richard Donner did great films in his era. That's not the Superman we have anymore. The Superman we have now is a little tougher, a little mean, a little more realistic. It's a more real, that works better. Realistic characters work better. Now, you can do Captain America works, so you can do that type of character, but it doesn't have to be as oh shucks golly as the Richard Donner films, and it doesn't need to be a love letter. Yeah, they screwed up Lex Luthor, but they always screw up Lex Luthor. Okay, I did an entire video on why they get Lex Luthor wrong in the movies, why they don't actually embrace his narcissistic personality disorder, and they keep trying to make him a megalomaniac, and for some reason he's constantly doing real estate scams. It's like Warner Brothers doesn't get it. They do not find that singular vision, and that's the key. That's why Marvel works, is Kevin Feige. I saw an interview talking about Hawkeye, and something as simple as a couple of the arrows that they use. Remember the first Pym arrow that made the other arrow giant? That was Kevin Feige's idea, for it to be shot straight up and have it come down on the truck instead of trying to shoot at the truck. Okay? Kevin Feige, the guy that runs the entire studio, is still hands-on enough to talk about special effects on how to do an arrow in a TV show in a year where they're doing 5 or 6 TV shows. They've got all these projects going on. He's that involved. He's that ingrained into the process. Kathleen Kennedy is doing the same thing with Star Wars. Even Amy Pascal is doing it with Spider-Man, and she's working with Kevin Feige. Who does Warner Brothers have? Well, they tried it with Zack Snyder, and it didn't work. And I'm not saying it didn't work because the movies were bad. Some people didn't like them. Other people loved them. The big Justice League movie, I actually like it. I like what he did. I enjoyed the 4-hour thing. It could have trimmed down some, but yeah, Warner Brothers has 2 of the most recognizable characters in the world with Batman and Superman. Probably the most recognizable female character with Wonder Woman. Zack Snyder made Aquaman cool with Jason Momoa. I don't get it. How are they screwing it up so bad? And then they keep making decisions that trip over themselves and make it worse. They're talking about the Naomi TV series is going to introduce yet another version of Superman. Why? If you're going to do the TV, if you want to keep TV and the movies separate, great. But you've got Tyler Hoechlin, who is a great Superman on Superman and Lois, who has been a great Superman since he was introduced in Supergirl and showing up on the other Arrowverse shows. It's on the same network. Just use him. Why introduce another one? Why make Michael Keaton the Batman? I mean, it's a nostalgia play for a handful of people that still care. Most people, they moved on. They went, okay, Christian Bale's Batman. Okay, that was cool. Ben Affleck is Batman. I mean, you're constantly changing these things. Jeffrey Wright is the commissioner. No, it's J.K. Simmons. Oh, no, it's Gary Oldman. Who the hell? Warner Brothers needs that focused person. I know they tried to do it with Jeff Johns for a while, and they did try to do it with Zack Snyder. Jeff Johns did the TV. Zack Snyder did the movies. If you're not happy with that guy, with whatever the guy is doing, then find the right person. But don't keep throwing things away and twisting and making it more and more confusing for the general audience. Yeah, comic people are going to get it. they're going to understand the multiverse and all this other stuff. And we've just proved that there's a certain amount that you understand with, with Spider-Man No Way Home. You can explain that, but we don't need multiverse all the time. I'm really hoping that after Doctor Strange, we close the door on the multiverse for a while. Let's get back down to some street level stuff. That's why I loved Hawkeye. It was back down to street level gangs and stuff we could understand. The Tracksuit Mafia, Kingpin. It was a level that we could understand again. Shang-Chi was a level we could understand again and not have to know everything. I mean, Eternals went big, but it didn't tie into everything. DC and Warner Brothers are just making an absolute mess of what they're doing. They need to find that vision. If they're going to make their movies connect, it's like, okay, if you're erasing all this stuff, yet you have Zachary Levi still playing Shazam, and it was supposed to be Henry Cavill's Superman at the end of Shazam, and now you're going to get Black Adam, and that's part of that universe. Well, Black Adam's going to be a completely different tone than Shazam. So you've got this family-friendly movie, and then you're going to have this darker movie. You're going to introduce the Justice Society. It's a frustrating mess. These are amazing characters that we grew up with, we love. We want to see good movies. And yes, we want them to connect because we want Hawkman to fly into a scene with Superman, and we want the Flash to run over to see Batman, and we want these characters to interact because it's now not even a pipe dream. It's proven to work with Marvel. So why is DC so bad at this? And they're not the only ones. There's a lot of companies that are really having a problem getting their stuff off the ground. I look at the Bloodshot movie. It wasn't bad. It just wasn't great. It wasn't the start of a universe. It was just okay. You could have went with somebody other than Vin Diesel and probably had a better movie. Because Vin Diesel plays Vin Diesel. If you're casting Vin Diesel, it's because you want him to be Vin Diesel. You don't want him to be X, Y, or Z. You don't want him to be Ray Garrison. You want him to be Vin Diesel. So I really think anybody who's doing a cohesive universe needs to really have that visionary person, whether it's Kevin Feige as Kathleen Kennedy. And I know a lot of people aren't happy with Kathleen Kennedy, but she does have a vision and it's moving along and everything connects. I don't know what they're doing at Warner Brothers. It's an absolute cluster. They keep changing the people in charge, and it's not going to get better until they get their heads out of their collective butts and starts figuring out what it is they need to do. You've got a great Superman with Henry Cavill. If Ben Affleck wants to quit, fine, but don't go to Michael Keaton. I love Michael Keaton. Okay, don't get me wrong, but why are you making Batman that much older than Superman? I mean, okay, I've ranted for almost 20 minutes on that. Lefty says, agree, but I see him as Riddick in everything. Exactly, because he's one note. He's one, I think the only thing he plays differently that he doesn't come across as Vin Diesel is Groot. And he just says, I am Groot. So how does one get a job with Warner Brothers that lets you screw up everything? If I knew that, I'd be working for Warner Brothers right now. JD says, Warner's knows that if they poop out a comic movie, they will make money. They underestimate fan passion. They bring in new fans, sure, but they aren't keeping the old ones. Same thing happens in wrestling. You can only insult our intelligence so many times. Exactly. That is absolutely right, JD. There really is a point where you've got to. I am not looking forward to the Flash movie. I'm not that big a fan of Ezra Miller in the first place, but with all the stuff they've got going on, it just seems like a convoluted mess, And I'm looking forward to Black Adam, but because I want to see Pierce Brosnan's Dr. Fate, I have no interest in in Black Adam, or I also want to see Aldous Hodge as Hawkman. So those are the two characters I'm seeing it for. Not for Black Adam, not for Atom Smasher, or any of the other characters. Warner Brothers is just an absolute mess. They're half hanging on to things and then half getting rid of it. You know, how do you keep Jason Momoa and Gal Gadot and Ezra Miller and throw away Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, and Ray Fisher? It just doesn't make sense to me. All right. I think that's probably a long enough rant. And Kyle's supposed to be interviewing me now, so I'm hoping he's back from getting his mic from the car. He's back from getting.
You ranted long enough for me not only to do that, but also to skim a 120-page graphic novel. So, do we want to take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll start the interview portion of the evening?
Yep, that sounds good.
All right. Well, in the words of Dan, I guess I'll say it. We'll be right back.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales. To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit comicshoplocator.com today.
Go ahead.
Welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. I am, I guess, temporarily your host, Kyle. Today's topic is Dan.
No, today's topic is karma.
No. Because, well, Dan has a Kickstarter going through Dynamite Comics for Kickstarter, which I can't find my note with the link, but I'll have a link for you in the comments here shortly. So first, before we get started, Dan, because again, the topic is Dan, what made you decide you wanted to be a writer of things?
Oh, wow. It pretty much has happened early on when I was in high school. I was a drama major, and I found myself starting to write plays and stuff to perform. At the same time, I was writing comics, my own comics in high school. I couldn't draw well enough to make my own comics. I mean, I did a couple. I can draw better than stick figures, but not a lot better. I actually have some covers out there that I designed, and had other people draw. So I do roughs, but that's about it. But a lot of it comes from reading comics when I was a kid, and then going to my first convention when I was 11 and meeting Jack Kirby, and just having an amazingly positive experience with Jack Kirby, and just, I'm an 11-year-old kid, and I come up to him and I get a book signed. I'm so enamored with the thing, with the whole process and how nice he was. I run out back to the retailer section, and I buy all 15 issues of the Black Panther run. I run back. He's gone from his table, but I catch him in the lobby of the hotel, and he sits there and signs every single one of them for me. You come out of a convention like that at 11 years old, you think the people in the comic industry are the best people ever, and I wanted to work with them. I wanted to be in that industry.
Then later on in life, you realize that a lot of them are me, and maybe you regret your life choices.
No. I have had the honor of meeting some incredibly nice people that I grew up not idolizing, but just looking up to. Jim Valentino is such a great guy, and I've gotten to work with him. Michael Golden, I have had so many dinners with Michael Golden, and am just so amazed at his talent. Yet most of the time when we talk, it's about anything else, everything else, debating whether chicken mole is a good idea, to how Jimi Hendrix plays his guitar. I mean, those are the type of topics we've talked about. I mean, just Matt Hawkins over at Top. I've met so many great people in this industry that I've not regretted it at all. I mean, yeah.
Then what brought you to photography?
Oddly enough, comics. I got around the mid 90s. I, like a lot of people who get into comics, I met some artists and writers and stuff through my local comic shop. And we decided we had this opportunity to do a convention in LA where we'd get a free table if we helped them put things together. And we decided to do ash cans for the show. Everybody would put in a couple page story. We'd make these ash cans and sell them. And we ended up pulling this group together. Now there's a lot of backstory on what happened, but eventually I ended up kind of leading this group of artists and writers and stuff. And one of the writers was this friend of mine named Michelle, who based her character off of herself. And the artist drawing it, a guy named Michael Whalen, not the Michael Whalen, a different artist named Michael Whalen, lives in Arizona and needed some reference photos. And my best friend at the time, a guy named Brian, was supposed to take these pictures. He was a photography guy. He would hike out into the woods and just take pictures and stuff. That was his thing. But if you put a person in his picture, it would be horrible. But just landscapes, he was amazing. Well, he hemmed and hawed about it. And eventually Michelle called me up. She goes, I got to get these pictures out to Michael. Can you take them? I went, okay. And I went borrowed my mom's camera and ended up doing these photos, and we had a lot of fun. We did probably a few photos that weren't necessarily going to be for the artist. They were more just for Michelle. And I kind of got the bug from doing that, ended up getting my own camera and started taking photos with just about every female friend I have. My girlfriends, my ex-girlfriends. I ended up having people come to me going, hey, can you do photos of my girlfriend? And I'm like, what kind do you want? Well, if she'll do nudes, that'd be great. I'm like, okay. And it just kind of went down that path.
It's interesting. Do you remember Randy Johnson?
The baseball pitcher?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know what he does now?
I'm going to guess photography.
He's an award-winning photographer. He does wildlife photography and concert photos.
Okay.
Like he toured with Metallica as their official concert photographer.
See, I could totally see that, where I couldn't see him as a model photographer because of his height.
Right.
I have the similar problem. He's taller than me. I have to sit during the photo shoots so that I'm not shooting down constantly at the models.
Right.
But in a concert setting, if you're on the floor shooting up, being tall is great.
Right. I mean, he's got pictures where it's like he tells stories like, okay, so I laid on my stomach in the jungle for like 4.5 hours. And then eventually I got this picture of this cheetah that was like 6 inches from me.
Yeah.
I'm going, you're Randy Johnson. You maybe could, I don't know, be teaching pitching.
Nope.
But
Nope.
he chose to become a photographer. And photography is one of those things that interests me because I studied it in school as part of my graphic design studies. And I had a good eye, but my vision is so bad that the pictures were always blurry because I kept focusing so that I could see them clearly, but I can't see. So turns out I'm a really bad photographer.
Yeah.
So people who are good at it, it always kind of, is interesting to me is how they got started and what kind of their process is. Karma is, and again, I just skimmed 120 pages in 20 minutes or so. Karma is, it uses that as an entry point, right? Like the story is not so much about the photographer or the model or karma, or it's a kind of explain that part of it, right? Like the entry point into the story.
It's a slice of life romance comic similar to like Sunstone or Swing. That, it has a certain amount of eroticism to it. But the bottom line is it's a love story. It's a romance comic, but it's for adults. It's got nudity, it's got fetishism, and it's for that market. There is definitely a market for it. Matt Hawkins, who runs Top Cow, will tell anybody who will listen that their best-selling book is Sunstone by Stepan Sejic. And you have to keep in mind that most of the pages are available free on DeviantArt. They just collect them and put it out there.
Just to reference 69 Lefty Blues' Giggity and J.R. Smith Digital Artists' Nudity, as in bare feet. There were parts of this book when I was skimming it that I thought I might need to contact HR because I needed an adult in the room. This is, the book is, yes, there's a fair amount of that, but even beyond that, like, would it be fair to say that Skinamax, this is the Skinamax of comics? In that those movies that you used to see on Skinamax, they weren't so much about the sex and the nudity. They had the actual plot and an actual story that was actually most of the time decent in those movies.
Uh-huh.
But that that's a part of it, in that it's a part of human existence, but it's secondary or tertiary even to the overall kind of human relationship stuff that is the focal point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the bottom line of it is it's all part of a relationship. If you're telling about a relationship, especially between two characters, Karma is a model who lives in a world. Shannon Tweed, Monique Parent. They were all big model or actresses in those kind of movies. Karma is, what's a good way to put it? I know a lot of models, and when you're in that type of thing where your job is basically you set up a shoot, you drive there, you get naked, you spend a few hours posing for someone, and then you leave and you move on to the next job. There's a more of an openness to it. And to convey that in this book, but keep the sexuality out of it, wouldn't work. You've got to embrace the whole thing, and that was part of it. And this is a world that I've spent 20 years in. I've had I have spent hours with, like I said, a naked woman taking photos while we're talking about how she grew up in a small Texas town as the daughter of the local mortician slash coroner, and would help her dad with autopsies as a kid. So the whole thing gets changed. There's a desexualization to it, but it's also extremely ramped up, you know?
Right.
And there's things in the book that come from my real life. I have a friend who is more of an adult film actress who, when I met her, was on an ongoing Playboy TV series when Playboy TV was big. I don't even know if it's still around anymore or not.
I don't think it is.
But she was a regular on a TV show, and I would go over to her house to hang out with her and like go out to dinner and stuff. We became good friends. But I'd get over there. She's like, I need to take a shower. Come keep me company, which meant I go into the bathroom and sit on the toilet and chat with her as she's taking a shower. You know, Is that a normal thing for anybody else? No, but in this world it is. So there's a certain amount of desexualization.
Right. And I find that's true in the theater community too, right? Like it's, you know, you make a quick change. You gotta do what you gotta do. You gotta, you know, it's, I think that part of what this is going to do is it's going to demystify the kind of weird relationships that people in, and weird is the wrong word. The unique relationships that people have when they're in this world of, you know, photography and modeling or television production and actors and actresses or theater, where it's nobody really cares. Let's just get the job done and go home.
Yeah.
JD Smith Artist has a question. Were you comfortable enough to use the toilet while talking?
No, I'm more uptight than they are. I definitely.
That's true.
Let me give a quick story real quick. Same person. I ended up officiating her wedding, and her husband ended up moving to Texas a little while afterwards. I'm at dinner with them, just kind of a goodbye dinner. I'm there with my wife, and as we're talking, she tells me that she's had to condense down a lot of her stuff. She's not keeping her bed. She's getting rid of it because he's got a bed and stuff. And she says, I kind of sad, though. I really liked that bed. You and I had a lot of fun on that bed. Now, I never slept with this woman.
Correct.
Okay. But the looks on the faces of her husband and my wife at that moment.
Right.
Was tiny, but also looking at her, I'm not 100% sure that she doesn't remember that we didn't sleep together.
Well, that's fair.
Yeah.
No, it's right. There are always those inside jokes too, right? I have a friend who is in a similar position to your friend who is an adult entertainer, and it's no big deal. It's in fact, and we've talked about this, you and I, in talking about karma. You have to tell them that you're not interested in seeing their work because that's not how you see them, you know? Yeah. So at some point I noticed that shift in this book, right? Mm-hmm. That this was a professional relationship that turned more than that. Mm-hmm. And at some point it's no longer about seeing her as a model, seeing her as this sexual thing, but seeing her as a person.
Right.
And because of the way her views had been affected by her profession, she maybe has trouble with that. Mm-hmm. There's a point in the book, and I'm trying not to spoil it, which is why I'm talking sort of strangely. There's a point in the book where everything starts to get a little sideways for our protagonist.
Yes.
and it's because of a situation that she put him in.
Mhm.
Tell me about writing something like that. Like, how do you write the swerve where everything kind of goes off the rails?
Well, because anything I write, whether it's romance, it's horror, it's a superhero book, anything I write it from characters first. And when I'm writing a character, I want to get to know them as well as I possibly can, so that when I'm writing, what they do is second nature. It's almost like watching a play in my head. I kind of let them act it out. And then with these characters, I did cast them, and Karma is an amalgamation of a lot of different women I've known. I've known a lot of amazing women,
Mm-hmm.
and in a lot of ways, this is kind of a love letter to those women, because I think Karma is amazing. The character is an amazing person who is trying to do something special with her life. But I think when Alex comes into her life, it's more than just Alex is coming from a straight-laced world into this life. And it reminds me a lot of, in the 80s, there were a lot of movies about the straight-laced guy following the girl into the wildlife.
Right.
I think Jeff Goldblum did one. There was a bunch of movies like that. And that's kind of was my starting point. But then that seriousness or that normalcy that comes in, if you are constantly in the middle of a tornado, if your entire life is in the middle of the tornado, and suddenly there is a rock in the middle of it that's sturdy and you can grab onto and you can find some balance, it changes you, and that becomes important. And I don't think the character's never been in a situation where she's had that. And that's what I wanted to come across. That since she was a kid, she lost both her parents. She got into modeling. She got into these worlds. So it's been this constant turmoil. So to have this guy come in who isn't just there for the good time.
Right.
It was like one of the most important scenes in it for me is where she tries to cancel because she's not feeling well. And his response isn't, okay, I'll see you next time. It's pick up some food and a movie and go over and take care of her.
Right.
Which is a very normal thing to do. It's a guy, it's right. What you do when you care about somebody, but it's something she's never dealt with before. So as much as this is him going into this very chaotic, erotic world, it's also her getting taste of a more normalized world, a more caring, getting somebody in her life who cares about her for her, not for what she can do or what she looks like.
Right. So, but from a storytelling standpoint,
mm-hmm.
when you're plotting that out and you're trying to figure out those character beats and those things, do you figure out the resolution first or figure out because like at one point, I think it's safe to say at one point, this whole thing almost falls apart.
Mm-hmm.
Do you write the end and the resolution first, or do you write the falling apart first and then figure out how to fix it? Like, how does Dan do it?
Okay. Dan doesn't do it the way you should. Dan doesn't do any of the writing like the way you should. Like
no,
a mystery.
I don't think there's a way you should. I think it's just how do you do it?
I have a loose idea of what I want the ending to be, but in this case, I didn't really. And this is in the plotting stage, not necessarily in the scripting stage. I kind of let the characters be the characters and see where it goes naturally. And like I said, I know what point A and point B are, but what roads we take, I let the characters decide. So, if it naturally seems to go over here, then that's where we go. So I didn't sit down and necessarily plan out these beats. I kind of let them happen as you would in a normal relationship. I kind of let them have their relationship and to see where it goes and hope I had an interesting story when I was done, but yeah, I thought with these two characters and some of the scenarios I wanted to put them in, but a lot of it just came about naturally as the story progressed.
So, the book is on Kickstarter right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to point out to everybody that the link is in the comments. Right now there are 651 backers.
Yes.
$30,349 in terms of funding,
Mm-hmm.
and 22 days left to go.
Yes.
So you're 8 days in, and you've gone more than 10 times your goal.
Yes.
Is this your first Kickstarter? Is this your first crowdfunder?
Yes.
Okay, so how does that make you feel?
I'm hesitant because it's my first Kickstarter, but it's not Dynamite's first Kickstarter.
Right, but like this is people like and say what you will, Dynamite knows what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is why this is doing so well, but these are people showing up to support a book you created.
And I am blown away by that. I absolutely am. I've got to say, it's funny. I've started writing my first comic, and I did that Kickstarter, that Ashcan thing in like 1995. I published my first book in 96, more in 99, and then started doing freelance in 2001. So the last 20 years, I've been a freelance writer, doing everything from IDW, Zenoscope, all these different books. And the ones that seem to catch people's attention always surprise me. Probably my best received book ever was The Freeze, which was, 19 years into my career or 20 years into my career. This blows me away. I mean, it absolutely does. Nick has already said that, possibly do more. That's already come up in conversation, and it's not a conversation I started. That was a conversation he started. And these are characters that I really want to do more with. And if I can build this audience, then, I will absolutely do as many stories as people want with these characters. But I think it's an interesting premise, and it's, like I said, it's a genre that I think is coming back around. It gets kind of pushed aside because of the adult aspect of it. But again, Sunstone is the top-selling Top Cow book of all time.
Sure.
Swing and stuff like that. And, Nick told me I need to send Matt Hawkins a fruit basket. I told him we play D&D together. I'll just make sure he gets a nice gift in the game.
Right, just make sure his character doesn't die.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I watched that first day. I knew what our initial goal was, and I knew that goal was low. But so when we passed it, I'm like, okay. And then I had to reach out to the guys who's running this, or Nick, Jim Kahoric, who I used to work with over at Bleeding Cool, so I have a good rapport with Jim, a couple other people, and I said, okay, are we doing good? I don't have a frame of reference. What does this mean? Because I'm friends with Ron Zabala, who does his Mount Olympus comics, and he does 75,000 with some of his books and stuff. It's amazing. And so again, I don't really have a good frame of reference, but they see the powers that be seem very happy with how things are going. but we still we have some big stretch goals coming up that we really hope to get to, to really make this a success.
So do you know what those stretch goals are, and can you talk about those? Can you preview those?
Well, we've done 2 so far that we've met, and they're trading cards from actually inside the book. So they're taking some of the saucier images from the book and doing these collector trader cards. Something we're talking about right now is possibly taking and doing a print or a set of prints off of my actual photography. But that's something we're in the works on. We've got some other things involving my photography that we're talking about. But again, we've got a couple already, and then if it keeps going, we'll need more, and that's what we're talking about.
I've got an idea for one. Dan Wickline takes your profile picture through Zoom only.
Yeah.
So no, yeah, I will say this. This is not normally the kind of book I kickstart.
Mm-hmm.
I don't generally kickstart the erotic. I don't because it's not a part of the industry that I spend a lot of time reading.
Yeah.
The romance kind of parts of this. However, I will say that since backing Karma, Kickstarter doesn't really know what to recommend to me anymore. And I've backed a couple of other projects that have got me on board with this is a part of the industry that's really coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. There's some really interesting work being done in this sort of more adult graphic novel, telling a whole story, not putting out a bunch of single issues.
Yeah.
Sort of genre.
The key to this genre, and there has always been adult comic books out there. There's always been, basic over-the-top sexualized comics. Just like there is in everything. There's movies, there's books. That's out there. This genre is that slice of life relationship thing that doesn't shy away from that aspect. And I keep going back to Sunstone because it kind of is the leader in the industry.
Right.
And that is about fetishism. And I mean, the 2 main characters get together because one of them is looking for a dom and they end up in a relationship. But it's like 6 graphic novels in, and now he's doing some other stuff. He's got the book Fine Print out. Matt Hawkins did the Swing book because of how good Sunstone did. And Matt is having good luck with Swing because they're basically a study of characters. They're a study of a romance. And not, you can't even get that in the movies nowadays. There really aren't these big, you get romantic comedies, but you don't get relationship movies anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And again, and it's not hardcore. I mean, that's the thing is there's nudity, there's sexual situations, but it's not, you're not seeing all the busy work.
Right. If you're prudish, you're going to be, ooh, but you're not going to be, oh my God, someone call a priest.
Yeah.
It's real in the way it is. And then, JD Smith says, whereas the Japanese stuff seems more hardcore rather than romantic. I don't think it's that. It's the difference between this and the stuff you find in similar style manga is the realism.
Yeah.
This feels like a story I could hear friends of mine telling, at, the dinner before their wedding, as opposed to like when you're looking at some manga, it's no, that's never going to actually happen. That's not how that works, Yeah.
Well, his message above is kind of what's important. He says, I could be wrong, but I feel like this genre has still been going on in France and Italy. And you're right. Milo Manara, somebody mentioned above. that's a great example. The humanoids type of stuff, the metal, that it's the type of story. It's a relationship story, but look, if you're in a relationship, the odds are sex is going to be part of it.
Right.
And if it's not, well, I'm sorry for you, because sex is awesome. But
right. If it's not, you're not going to be in that relationship very long.
Exactly.
So before we run out of time, let's go over the things again. We have on Kickstarter right now, link is in the comments, but we have the Mirka and Dolfo cover.
Right. Who's doing the book Sweet Paprika, which is also this type of genre.
Right. We have the A cover, which is
Michael D. Pascal.
Yes.
Which there's also a naughty version of that cover.
There is also a naughty version of that cover. And then there's this cover, which is the cover that I backed at.
We consider this the main cover, is Stepan Sejic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wrote the book back in 2019. We waited for Stepan for this cover. And we knew we should. Yeah. And this was Nick. Nick wrangled this. I reached out to Stepan, and I had he'd done a cover for back when I was on doing Sinbad for Zenoscope. He did a cover for that. I worked with his wife on the Honor Harrington book over at Top Cow. So I reached out, and he's like, no, I just don't have time. I am so swamped. I am sorry. And Nick pursued him and kept after him and got it. JD, quick question. I didn't see a digital version of the campaign, or did I completely miss? There is a digital version. It's
depending on when you backed, JD. It didn't come up until like 2 days in.
Yeah,
it was something that was left off and added on by mistake. So you can totally get in on digital version now.
Yes.
So real quick, who is the interior artist on the book, Dan?
His name is Carlos Renault. And he's absolutely amazing. And I don't think this book would have gotten off the ground at all if we didn't find Carlos for this. This Joe Rybrandt over at Dynamite brought him on, and he sent me a couple pages. Like, what do you think of this guy? I'm like, I'm in love. This is
the art on this book is amazing. So, make sure you get in on that. Last 30 seconds here, Dan. Social media, website, all those kind of places where people can go and get updates from you on what's happening.
On all the social media sites, it's my name. It's Dan Wickline. On Facebook, on Twitter, it's DanWick70 on Instagram, but everything else is just Dan Wickline. So,
and I'm sure if you tune in every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to the Dan Wickline Show here on The Experience, Dan will give you an update as to what's going on with the book on his show. And Dan will also be a guest on our EXP Expo, where maybe Paul Story will finally get to ask him the questions that Paul, I'm sure, works so hard to prepare. If his internet ever comes back. He lives in Michigan. God knows he may never get his internet back. It could just be descending into chaos up there. For Dan, I've been Kyle. Tune in tomorrow when Dan Wickline breaks down episode 3 of the Book of Boba Fett.
Yes.
And then on Sunday, for Popko the Writers here on The Experience and over on his own YouTube channel, you can get a twofer. There you go. So we will see everybody next time. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Kyle,
for having a show where I get to interview you. And we will see you guys later.
Good night, everybody.